All right, everybody, here we go from our Twitch stream and my Twitch community. We're gonna rinse really hard on Metal Gear Rising, and apparently these are all vocal boss themes, and there's lyrics on it. So if you guys are ready, I'm ready. This is gonna be a long play. Smoke them if you got them, drink them if you got them, or whatever. We're doing this. All right. Super grindy and chunky. Now, somebody left a comment and made me think, what channel do I put this on? If I should put this on my heavy metal channel when I edit this out. This is so punchy and grindy, but the mix is not what I would consider, like, if I was just listening to Periphery, or it's a different kind of a banging mix. There's a lot of synth going on back in there, and it could be also the volume that I'm listening to, but I do have it on kind of hot in my cans, and it's really popping and bouncing a lot. What a great voice. I don't know who this singer is. What a sick voice he's got. And that hook is very memorable, very melodic. And what I like about what's happening in my small little journey of heavy metal and stuff is I'm able to listen to tracks that are like Meshuggah, who are just going to lean in with the people's elbow and grind you down with just the most grinding, genty heaviness. I don't even know if it's gent. Forgive me. Don't come for me in the comments. And the growling and the power, but yet these singers have that ability that I've learned that, you can be that growler, you could be that power singer, and then just have these gliding melodies that just kick. Something else I want to say is tech death. You're right. I'm sorry. Thank you for straightening me out. I know, very protective genre, but I do love Meshuggah. I have fallen in love with their composing. Anyhow, but what I will say is there's a very handy dose of grindy synth behind it. And I don't know how that, plays in the rule of thumb, let's say with doing gaming composition, as having an element that's kind of a must-have kind of thing. But I really love that. Once again, I call it hybrid. And when I call hybrid compositions, that always means you have natural instruments. It could be strings, it could be guitars, bass, and stuff. And then you have synth elements. God, those big super chunk fat synth sounds that they use, probably a little different from, let's say, sorry, I know, I'm gonna get to that in a second. I just want to bring to mind, at the very end of that, there were these big fat chord synth grindy patches that they were using to kind of reinforce or emulate super crunchy guitar. Remember, I said enforce or emulate together. a combo of melodies. The one thing that's unique about the hybrid composition using synths is that you have these powerful guitar tones, but that grindy teeth against the metal kind of synth vibe is kind of unmatched in being able to manage what I like 10K to 16K parts of the EQ range. So it could really add an extra like Scoville, 1 million Scoville ghost pepper kind of grittiness to it. But it still can hold its own melodically, so you could really do some really nice things, and that's what I loved about what I heard there at the very ending. I thought that was really super badass. Okay, let me go back a little bit, and let's start up with the next one. All right. Yes, synth stacking. Somebody made mention about here in the comments about the mixes and stuff, and I totally agree. These mixes are not what I would consider, in my personal opinion, which doesn't amount to anything, but we're on the internet and everybody has a freaking opinion, you know, if you were to take these same exact stems out, let's say you gave them to Nolly or you gave them to one of our top 10 heavy metal engineers, they're going to completely produce this differently. But one of the things that I learned in my journey about being a composer is that when you're there to write music for something, you're an accompaniment and not the primary focus. So mixes are going to get approached differently. As a matter of fact, the very first song that I played, did you notice how the vocals were really sunk into the mix? As if it was just like a melodic line. Like if I wouldn't have had the lyrics, I wouldn't have known what it was saying. So I think these mixing techniques, you guys tell me if I'm right or wrong or if you feel the same way. The mixing techniques in games, even though this is synth metal kind of a sound and it's metal. But and of course it's different than Doom's metal, right? Than Mick Gordon's metal. But even Mick Gordon, though, still used a lot of heavy, crunchy synth work in between these, you know, drop A, drop D, or Beatle fart drop B, whatever it is that he was using. So he had authentic chugs in there. So that was going to he was going to deliver a different kind of mix on that, obviously, because of the authenticity of who he is as a musician and a composer playing that instrument. But that's the big difference. And this is probably might be a situation here is that you have a Mick Gordon doing Doom, who's an authentic metal guy. And let's just say whatever I'm listening to, the composer could be very well briefed in it, but then the decision to mix it in a certain way kind of makes it a little more, you know, laid back. That's just kind of how I'm kind of feeling. But excuse me. So let me continue on, and I'll catch up on some of these comments. Well, I like that little tail off. It gives you a little idea of what they were doing with delays and stuff on that to give us a certain effect. Real quick before we go into the next one, Somebody was saying this is a scene, I guess, where a dog is, getting some sort of freedom or is breaking free. So I guess that's where I read the howl and I was hearing what I thought was kind of a screaming technique. I want to just really quick, Ziggy Thorne had mentioned something that pretty much what I was hitting on, but he was spot on about what he was saying. I said you sync the vocal lines into not to be a distraction during gameplay, and that's what I was talking about. Even the work that I did for commercials in the mainland in the 90s and stuff like that, I would do these really great leads, whatever I was doing, but then in the mix I'd have to pull it way down because it would intrude and battle, let's just say, the voiceover. Or in this case, like I said, we don't want to distract too much from it, but there's very powerful work going on here. Okay, let's just continue on. Let's go. Cool chord changes or bass line. That was sick. If you listen to that, I'm going to go back and bring us back into that hook really quick. Listen to the layers of the harmonies of the background vocals, but also listen to the supporting melodic rhythm arrangement behind her singing that. So she's singing, she has these really rich harmonies that are sunk in the back, but listen to this other synth that's kind of supporting her melodic journey, but kind of a couple notes kind of pull you slightly away from it. I'm not going to say it was a complete counterpoint composition, but let's take it back and listen to that. But that was great. Super hooky. Once again, though, that mix is kind of low with her voice, isn't it? So I can hear in the background there, obviously, there's guitar in these tracks. The thing is that they're so mixed differently than I'm used to hearing on the heavy metal track. I can still detect the chugging. But once again, there's so much, synth work and layered synth and stacked synth sounds that's happening there that for me, my ears are still kind of adjusting to these mixes, which is always a new thing. I had to do that way back in the 80s when I was an engineer, back in the Hollywood days back there. But you always have to adjust because being an engineer at a recording studio, when you're like a staff engineer, or in my case, a staff second or something like that, you are subject to whatever walked through that door. So it could be heavy metal, it could be pop, it could be Norteñan music from South America, it could be, or Mexico, it could have been. So I always had to sit there with all these engineers coming through and trying to figure out, all these different techniques and stuff. So I'm getting used to what I would consider this kind of more of a gaming mix here. Really quick, her voice. I'm sorry, but what a great voice. But she kind of reminds me a little bit of the vocalist from Spirit Box, the clean sound of her tone. If you remember her name, type it down here. But that's what the tone of her voice sounds like. Okay, let's keep going. Okay, so this track to me has more of kind of like middle of the road pop metal contemporary kind of vibe to it. I think it could be because of the grindiness, the straight power of the the grindiness. I mean, the first few tracks we've listened to had some really nice, rhythmical turnarounds and movements and chord changes and twists. This one's pretty straightforward, but it's very accessible. And what I mean by that is it's like this is the kind of track that can pull, people in, that have, let's say, just more of a civil rock ear. Did I say that right? I gotta watch what I say, man. I'm so afraid for one day saying something weird. Everybody comes for me. But yes, Tenyon, that's SDTM. Courtney LaPlante was her name. Yes, she's a phenomenal singer. All right, let's go. You know what, too? I think one of the reasons why this sounds a little, I'm just going to say it, slightly homogenous in what we've listened so far, is because this doesn't seem to have as well, doesn't seem to, doesn't mean it doesn't, I'm just not picking it up. In my AKG 240s, I'm not sponsored by them, I thought I would just be an idiot, is the fact that I didn't hear any real guitar in it. I think this was just more of a grindy, layered synth stacky track, and it had that, I'm sorry, it kind of felt like it was kind of a little bit of that glam rock. I'm not saying I'm sorry because it sucks, I'm just saying it just seems, out of everything that I've heard, this one had a little bit more of an 80s, yay, we will rock you, I'm thinking of the guy in my mind, the Twisted Sister, who's a brilliant monster of a talent and a good person, but just in my mind, that's what I was kind of envisioning when I was listening to this particular track. I hope I don't offend anybody with that description, but yes, Dee Snider. Yeah, no, and that's true. Glam rock is one of the things that my friends that would go on tour in the 80s and the early 90s and stuff would go, when glam was kind of shifting and stuff in the 80s, we're going, forget this, man, we're all going to Japan. And then they'd show me pictures of them on stage in Coliseums. I'm like going, however it works. And it's still I think it's because what I am learning about composers and the music in Japan, it's very melodic. You know, it's very melodic in a very large way, and to me, that's what happened. That's what rock in that glam era was. You know, that just very melodic, large sound. You know, so and then everybody was doing cosplay. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, I figure if I'm going to get canceled, I might as well just go for it, right? I'm not pinning that track on glam rock. I'm definitely not. I was just kind of making, you know, just a little kind of a, you know, thing that I do. All right, guys, let's continue on. You're right, there's that synth, right? Okay, this is absolutely huge, obviously, and I can tell by the comments now we're getting into it. There's a part of this where I know there's no genre call this, but I'm going to say it's like EDM grindcore. Could that possibly be something? You know, when they open up with that, in my mind, automatically, what's the name of that incredible shredder that is just lighting the place up? Jason, gosh. Please help me out. That shredder, he's an incredible guitar player. His name is Jason, but that's what automatically, those sweeps, I was like, oh my God, that reminds me so much of him. But it's so powerful, once again, the synth stacking, you know, and the drums. Excuse me, yes, Jason Richardson, thank you. And the drum programming, you know, once again, that's that thing. That's why I call it EDM grindcore or EDM metalcore or something, because obviously, you know, the drums are, you know, sample synth drums and stuff like that, which this is the only thing that takes this away from being a different experience, listening experience on more of an organic thing, is because it's not necessarily all organic, right? So even once we got into the core of it, when they start singing, once again, one of the things that each one of these tracks all have in common, not the bass, not the drums, not the guitar, are synths doing a lot of action sequences, which makes sense, right? It translates in an orchestra too. So in other words, if a composer has an orchestra, has the, you know, a film in an orchestra, and wants to create that chase scene, you're going to hear those sequence reproduced in the orchestra as a composition, like an ostinato, which is a sequence of, you know, except they'll do it with the strings. So we're hearing these iterations of compositions that would translate into a, you know, an orchestral piece. But in the case of us listening to this as metal pieces and track pieces, you know, I'm kind of like, oh, where did the guitar go? He came in with a sweep, or it sounded like a sweep, but he came in with a sweep. Now it all disappeared. Oh, and it came back in balls to the wall, you know, in the hook. You know, so that's, I am really super digging this, but it's kind of a juxtaposition of like, I'm listening to metal, but no, I'm not, but it's EDM, but it's metal, but it is. And that was sick. Okay, whoever did that solo, maybe one of you guys open up an extra tab in your browser and see if you can find out who played the solo in that, because that was intense. That was hardcore. That was visceral as it gets, you know. And to me, that was the Ginsu knife of the track. And I'm not just talking about the tone of that guitar. I'm just talking about what the energy brought into that track just by virtue of that solo that lifted it from that digi-metal vibe. I know somebody just flamed me for calling it EDM. I'm sorry. I'm still not good with like calling one thing is calling something that, you guys are nice to me. You guys are being kind about it. But sometimes I go, oh God, I got to watch what I say. But what I loved about that solo, whoever did it, somebody's got to lick this up for me. Come on. Whoever did that solo in there, that definitely just leveled it up, you know, 2 times into more of a metal grind for me. You know, bringing a little more organic, a la like what I'm listening to on my channel. All right, guys, let's continue on. Hey, Chazer Tool. Okay, don't worry. I'll pull us back to get back into that solo. You know what I dig about this? Now, obviously, there's a lot more presence of the guitars in this mix, and it's a lot thinner in the arrangements. You notice there's not a lot of craziness going on with, you know, sequence and counterpoint melodic kind of, or harmonized melodic compositions. So there's a lot more space in this. By virtue of having a lot more space, I'm hearing a lot more of the guitar, and apparently we're about to get into a solo, but here's where I smile with, like, kind of like going, I'm going to go back a little bit and I'll let the song finish up. We'll go through the solo. Listen to the ghost notes of the snare and how it was programmed. This, because ghost notes, look, if you're a composer and you have to program drums and you have to do ghost notes, and I've done it before, it's hard, because if I was a drummer and I know how ghost notes are played. So ghost notes are not like, let's say the velocity is 125 on a regular 2 and a 4, like, ah, pa, and then you don't go pa, pa. You've got to want to give it that feel. I want you to listen to the ghost notes in this, and my hat's off to the guy programming it. So let's just start from right here. I'm going to go back a little further, kind of glow into that of the ghost notes, and then I'm going to go take it right all the way through to the end of this track.
With us now, something warm and pure. Find the peace within ourselves. No need for a cure. When the wind is slow and the fire's hot, approach our ways to see what rots. Oh, I'm ready. All the this is nature's sacrifice. When the air goes through with the brisk attack, the reptile tail ripped from its back. Where the sun sets.
And once again, this is a perfect example on the mixing techniques in games, commercials, TV, whatever. When you have these extraordinary leads and stuff like that, but they're so sunk into the mixes, even the vocals, you know, I'm watching everybody comment on that the vocals are sunk. And once again, it's like we'd already talked about early on, which was like, we don't want that as a distraction. You're not playing a video game so you can get hooked in to anything lyrical. And of which some people have left the comments about the lyrics being very campy and stuff. Well, they're being written as a script for a game, you know. So I'm at least from what I'm witnessing here and what I'm listening to and watching the comments, you know, they have a direct correlation to whatever's happening here in these boss fights. You see, I would have never in a million years ever thought I would ever have heard those words out of my mouth had I not started this journey with these guys. A boss fight. To me, if I was a boss fight, I was catching a case. You know, if you know. So, you know, that boss fight means a whole different thing. You know what I'm saying? All right. So let's see. The game's dialogue isn't subtle either. Yeah, true. Okay. Oh, can I please define ghost notes for new people? I think, yeah, I'll just briefly. Ghost notes are an articulation in a drummer's playing. Very, very, very heavily used in super prog bands, but even in Slipknot, Mudvayne, some of these more power like new metal guys, Korn even. It's these articulations in between the more powerful parts of a snare drum. So let's just say the pattern is now this snare pow might go that little that I'm doing with my mouth. How many guys, my God, that one section of me and Misha, when we did that podcast, we were talking about how many people actually play drums with their mouth, just like I just did. Not as articulating the way I did. I was just sharing kind of a thought process, but how many of us do kind of like drum out stuff going so that's kind of a good way to put it, I think. And also, yes, here's a better breakdown also by somebody else. Actual Proof also has a very nice, more of a theoretical, clinical breakdown of it, and that's very well written. Okay, let's go. Button. Great drums on this one. So whoever wrote this one has got a little bit more of a keener eye. It could be the same composer, but how they decided to give this one a little bit more of the juice has got a little bit more of a prog rock vibe, a little gutsier. One of the things that I hadn't mentioned through this whole thing is one of the unique textures that whoever's doing the editing on this and the engineering on this, they really like to play around with chopping up the vocals in a in a percussive arrangement, which is a really super good technique. I mean, once again, this has to go with the game that you're playing and anything, which I don't know anything about, but the energy, what it does is it really maximizes the energy. So if the singer's holding out a note, da, sorry, that had to have just made your cat, if it was listening in the back, just run out of the room. But so instead of it going, I'll do a different note, da, it would be there would be that chopping, and then they would maybe quantize the audio sound or something like that. So they're using that as a quite a consistent technique throughout all of these in this kind of pseudo digi metal kind of listening environment I got going here. Yeah, without a doubt, the vocals on this definitely way exceeded in mix and in quality and in performance. More of an authentic, power metal, grindy track and stuff. One thing that's happening a lot here, though, too, in the vocals that I'm noticing is there is a lot of doubling going on in a lot of these vocal tracks, and be it digital doubling or literally singing the track one on top of the other. In most cases, sometimes it's prudent because of the necessity of speed in delivering tracks that you might take a voice track and send it through a plugin that's called a doubler, or you use different techniques to thicken it up, and give it that kind of more layered sound. And then on top of that, you could take the core file of the vocalist still kind of in your face, and then move the digi doubled part back in the mix a little bit, and then you could even add stuff to it like a flange or a chorus. So I don't know if you guys are hearing some of that through some of these mixes too. One more quick question before I move on. There's a couple more here before, well, not quite the end. I'm still going to do a couple of calls here, but are they using the same singers through and through? Is it the same guy that's been singing all the way through? I'm only asking you guys because I can see that some of you guys already have some, some super knowledge on this. So let me know. Excuse me. Different vocalists, I believe. Okay. Was this? I'm sorry. I have one more question. Then these are all fading out, maybe because of how they fit in the game or something. But is there a full soundtrack of these tracks that actually finish off like songs? I don't know how this person made these videos, if there was where that fade is coming in, or are these songs actually just 2.5, 3.5 minutes long, kind of thing. Okay, let's move on. Yeah, some delay and reverb on that too. Yes, correct. Nice change up. right, so this one's got like a whole different vibe and energy to it. It's a little more proggy, but a lot more punchier, and there isn't the emphasis on the metal and the guitar and stuff. The emphasis is backed on the stacked synths and stuff. But whoever's doing the programming on the drums and mapping this out is doing an absolute sick job. Absolutely, it's just so cool. But this particular track has a little bit more of a memorable melodic, run to it. I don't know where this fits in the game and what exactly in this boss fight that's going on, because we're seemingly towards the end, right? This is the second to the last one, at least in this the videos or the playlist that I'm looking at. I'm going to go back into this. Let me ask you guys a really quick question as I go back into this. If you had to choose a band to cover all these tracks, knowing what you know about how they sound in their arrangements and their vocals and the playing and stuff, what band do you think would be absolutely mental if they covered all these tracks? What a giant ending for a boss fight. That had to have looked huge. Okay, last one on this playlist. North Plane, yes. Avenged Sevenfold. And Between the Buried and Me, yes, I agree with you. I got to stop somewhere really quick. I love the infusion of where they just kicked us in the teeth by adding their orchestral arrangements behind this, because to me it's extremely powerful. It's like you break a sweat just listening to it. And you guys who are playing the game, I'm sure, like you guys say, this is like the final battle, of which I just completely sucked the wind out of you by stopping. But it sounds ginormous in a stadium rock kind of vibe. Not that I'm a veteran of stadium rock, but it sounds absolutely huge in that capacity. Something that, once again, you would see any one of your major, like Between the Buried and Me, an Avenged Sevenfold, a North Lane kind of a thing with an orchestra behind it with just full grind out, going on, but just in this huge kind of metal musical theater kind of composition, whereas just absolutely huge. That is so cool, that line in there. God, that was huge. When you saw me doing this, this was me kind of like this was my reaction to the dissonance and the harmonies of the vocals that happened in that one little section there. And something else that was, I'm reading some of the comments as I'm doing this, which I'm now getting better at doing, going, is the fact that because the melody of the vocals are so tucked into the mix, that these predominant lines of these bigger orchestral arrangements really cut through, as somebody was talking about, you know, in the chat here, about the strings. And then there's the answer back with the darker bottom end with those, you know, the brass section. That's when you saw me going, da, da, da. You know, that was actually more melodically memorable to me than whatever he was singing, even though what he was singing was a very important part of the melody. He's just sunk really into the mix and stuff. And once again, if you're playing the game, that's, you know, this experience that you're giving me, and in return, whatever it is that I'm saying that's making you stay here beyond your bedtime, is the things that we don't get to hear while playing the game, right? Because our brain's trying to, you know, beat up the boss guy, and I call third ender. How, you know, you're trying to kill a boss, you're trying to do all these things, and you know, the music is there as an agitator or as a comfort, you know, to your journey with the video games. Excuse me, but you know, at the end of the game, the music is going to be sitting there as an element in the experience. So we get to sit here and listen to it like this, and then, you know, I do my little dives in it, then I start pulling out all these little things. But this was wonderful for me to go through this. I had never heard anything like this so far in my journey. I've only been doing this a few months now with the OSTs, and I loved every bit of it. And so as far as I'm concerned, the composer on this really dropped some blood, sweat, and tears on this project. This is why I want to hopefully get to talk to, like, I'm so blessed to have talked to Marty O'Donnell, Misha Mansour, as Carl Third Ender just, you know, mentioned and stuff. But I'm really hoping soon to get a hold of a a video game composer and ask those questions. You know, because it's a different mindset and stuff. But, you know, for me, where the biggest learning lesson that I've learned as a composer, listening to other composers on video game OSTs, is I had the sense of less is more, make it repetitive yet memorable and not monotonous so it becomes mundane. That all makes sense? Because when video games, you're playing again, and somebody just commented here, which was hilarious. I don't know where it went, but every time I stopped to make a comment, he felt like he died in the game. Yeah, so I don't know how that works. You know, I mean, if you get killed, you know, beating up a boss, does the music reset when you come alive? Or at least in this one, you know, does it reset, or does it kind of fade out? Or you just constantly, you know, there's somewhere in this, there's got to be a looping element. And that's what I'm really curious about. This is what I want to learn about, and hopefully get, you know, a gaming composer on here. Stand by for a second, because I got to sneeze and I got to turn off my mic. Here